And I also like What Now. I'm gonna leave a I'm gonna leave a link to his channel. He hasn't been active for a while, but he has a sexy voice, man, and I wish I had that voice. And I enjoy his videos very much.
Good evening. Well, my gruesome little people, how remarkably pleasant it is to be back in the warm, social, tentacular embrace of Authortube. Yes, it's What Now time again after long last, and you will remember my co-host, the Liverpool Evening Traffic. What's particularly interesting about this is that road doesn't lead to, or indeed from, anywhere of interest, so what they're all doing, I will never know. Yes, it's been a long time, hasn't it? I've been away for a little while, and Authortube has apparently gone completely mad. You're spilling tea left, right and centre, but no matter, for your bearded English teddy bear, the man is back with you. But how did this happen? How did this happen? I was away working on my masters and working on my book and losing sight of anything that wasn't to do with mountains of paper and feedback on the same sentence over and over and over again. Well, it was Mr. Robinson Castillo. I really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, because I'm going to refer to him from here on in as Comrade Castillo, purely because I love alliteration, who dragged me out of my inertia and alerted me to the existence of the In the Trenches tag, which rather regrettably has absolutely nothing to do with the Western Front or the Schlieffen Plan. You'll remember the Schlieffen Plan from history lessons. That's where half the continent of Europe went, oh no, why Belgium? And the continent of Africa went, oh no, not Belgium, but that's the 20th century for you. But it is apparently a delightful little Authortube tag originating with our friends and fellow beards over at Stripped Cover. And I have been dragged into it, so Comrade Castillo may not have fully realised what he's bringing back into Authortube, but let's give it a bash, shall we? Do you like my TARDIS phone case, incidentally? I've looked after it, I've had it for fucking years. Oh, actually, before we begin, seeing as this is the first time I've had a setup wherein one of my bookshelves is actually visible, a lot of people, because of how I sound and how I dress and my general demeanour, have this idea that I'm very highly convoluted and very highbrow, very intellectual and all of that, but would you like to know what, would you like to know what these are? Would you like to know what these books are right here? Original Thomas the Tank Engine, baby. I've also got a pop-up Jabberwocky that I've had since I was 3. I learnt to read on this book and it's absolutely horrifying. Would you like to see the last pop-up? It's coming out of his bastard head, look at that. You know, when we talk about formative experiences, this book really made me what I am today. Anyway, the tag. Question 1. Do you have a sweetheart novel slash short story slash poetry project, a project that turned you into a serious writer? Yes, I do. It's the one I'm working on currently. My room, my surroundings are, well, I can give you an example. Here, are all these books going to fall over? Yes. My room is full of sort of half serious, half finished things, but it's only in the last 18 months or so. That was a bad bit of framing, wasn't it? It's only in the last 18 months or so that I've started working on the previously elaborated on collection of 6 interconnected, macabre, short horror comedy stories to form my first proper book, and seeing as they are and experiment in different styles and interleave narrative devices, bookend and mirroring themes. This has been my first real serious attempt at making a proper piece of literature, and you can tell because I've lost more sleep, lost more weight, and shed more tears over the construction of this particular piece of work than on anything else ever. Seriously, I really may not survive the writing of this book. See my last video for details, I will post it down there. But the one I'm working on now, 3 short stories, 3 novellas, all interconnected in a strange noosphere, shamanic wandering through the phenomenon of death, is the one that made me a proper author. And it's going to be bloody awful, I can promise you that, but we'll have a good laugh all the while. Question 2. Do you, or do you ever plan to work on a series-length project? If by that it means in the Song of Ice and Fire, Hogwarts kind of book 1, book 2, book 3, then no, I don't particularly like series of books. Well, so I'm more, would you call it a series or a serial? Because I love the Discworld books, but I don't really fancy the idea of returning to one particular thing once I'm done with it. That may well change. The closest I have is I have in my notebooks a series of notes for, fuck it, we'll call it a series. We will call it a series, we will not avoid the world, that while they don't follow on from each other, they have a current thread that goes throughout them, and so it's a sort of folded in linear. Basically, there's one event that happens in one book, and after I'd sketched it out, I thought, well, what would happen if that carried on? So it would be different characters in different situations, but it would be following the development of this one particular thing. But I'm not going to elaborate on too much because, as I say, I'm working on this other book, and I've really got to focus on that, and focus is not really something I'm that good at. So I started talking about Thomas the Tank Engine. On my return to social media, I immediately started talking about Thomas the Tank Engine. I also have these 1970s ghost story collections that I got for 20p from Oxfam, and one of them is edited by Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah, this one. It's Alfred Hitchcock's favourite ghost stories, isn't that good? Great. Tag video. Did I mention Authortube that I haven't really spoken to anyone for quite a long time? I'm like a genie. I'm your Authortube genie. I only really exist if you summon me. I'm a quantum author. I exist only if observed. And the existential ramifications of this, the blight upon my sorry existence, is almost too much to bear. Question 3. Thoughts on mixed form projects, short stories that contain poems, novels that contain short stories, etc., etc. That should be obvious because I'm writing one, but I am all in favour of this. I think James Joyce rather kicked in the door of what you can do with his particular branch of postmodernism, really opened up particular levels of what you can do with the written word as it exists on the page. So I'm all in favour in playing with the structure of a novel, or of a book in general. I mean, in its most basic terms, look at Cloud Atlas, which ranges in its part of its epistolary, in fact 2 parts of it epistolary, one being letters, one being diary, and then wanders in its form, and then you can start doing crazy and beautiful things like the Marlowe Papers, which is a novel in verse. To all intents and purposes, it is a novel, but it's written as a series of poems, and it's beautiful and magnificent, and if you haven't read it, I advise you to do so, because it's a remarkable example of this kind of thing. Oh, it's gone dead. Pardon me. I'm feeling very excitable this evening, which is remarkable because I've got legitimately nothing to be excited about. Where do you picture publishing in 10 years? Still without me, probably. But hell, if we're all still here in 10 years, I'd be amazed if we haven't gone back to carving into the walls of caves, or, I don't know, the dilapidated ruins of Matalan. Where do I see publishing in 10 years? It's odd that it all seems to come around in circles, doesn't it? I mean, people are talking about Kindles and ebooks being the death of publishing, and we started talking about the dead tree press, and apart from newspapers and magazines, we seem to have reached an equilibrium when it comes to book publishing, but I think it may well turn out to be like the phenomenon we're seeing with the return of vinyl, although it's not really, it's not recent anymore, but it's been going on for quite a while. I think it comes down to the fact that technology is all about convenience, And if we use music as an example, you will never get anything more convenient than the MP3 download. That is the most convenient way of storing music. But people also want a certain level of aesthetic with how they consume art, and when it becomes a purely aesthetic choice, you get things like vinyl coming back. So I don't think the book is going to go anywhere. If I was feeling particularly optimistic, which I never am, but Lord knows I'm on YouTube at the minute, so I'll pretend I am. Maybe put a bit of a jaunty music underneath it as well. Some nice free stuff like bend sound. If I was feeling particularly optimistic, I'd say you could even imagine a return to the book as an object of beauty in its own right. You could see the aesthetes take over. You could start having more intricately created books now that they are purely for their aesthetic purposes. I have it, but I don't know where it is. Penguin Classics did a run of books, of classic stories. I think it was called the Threads series, and it's cut paper, like with a paper knife, and embroidered covers, and I've got a copy of A Wind of the Willows, but I don't know where it is because my library is shambolic. But no, I imagine you could make an argument for publishing going down a more aesthetic route and books as an object of beauty. The booksmith as its own profession could be something to come back out in the future, except it probably won't, because humans are despicable, irredeemable creatures, and they won't be happy until they're gargling in the radioactive mud. Did I mention my books are comedy? Number 5. If you could have one booktuber review your work, who would it be? That's not a very nice question to ask, now is it? That's... Oh, Messer's stripped cover. That's mean. Because of course I'm going to say you. Obviously. No, I don't think... having worked as a dead tree print... good lord, it was my foot on the chair. I thought there was a mouse in here. Did you hear that? I heard that. And now I can't do it again. There must be a mouse. Yes, having actually worked as a... writing it out and it being printed in sheets, book reviewer, you do just sort of get them sent to you. So I think I take what marketing people call the Dresden approach, which is nothing to do with urban fantasy and more to do with blanket bombardment of your chosen target, in this case reviewers. I can't think of any one particular one. Well, Madam A.S. Howell has always been remarkably kind to me, and I'm sure she'd give me a very fair... no, that's what I do. That's what I do. Because my book is to a rather niche sensibilities, I would want it reviewed by any booktuber that does not match it whatsoever. I'd like a young adult booktuber to review it, or a romance a booktuber to review it, just to see if I can get a square peg into a round hole. No, of course you can get a square peg into a round hole. You can get anything into a round hole. Get a square peg into a triangular hole. And that's what I do. I really want anybody who doesn't review or write dark, weird fiction to review my book. So if any of you are out there and happen to be watching this, give me a shout down below. And can we start doing that? Authortubers, booktubers, can we start sending completely mismatched works to each other? Just to get as much coverage as possible. Let's see what the poets think of the... I don't know. Actually, poets get into everything, don't they? They're like termites. Anyway, that's my answer. That's my answer. It's as good as it's going to get for that one. I've completely forgotten where I am and what I'm talking about. Number 6. Writers' quarrels are things of the legend. This is true. Let us not forget the Dublin street war between James Joyce and Samuel Beckett, because Beckett wouldn't marry his daughter. What author alive today would you want to spat with? I'm not a spat kind of guy. That's not why I became an author. Well, as much as I am, more of a build bridges, break bread, bring out the peace pipe kind of guy. No. If I had, I'm more in the case of if there was any beef or tea spilling, as I think it's called, between me and another author. I like to think that it's nothing that couldn't be solved with going to the pub, getting a few pints down us, and until they're in a sufficient state of intoxication that I can get a needle full of insulin under their big toenails so that the coroner will put it down as pancreatic failure. That's the kind of spat I do. If I thought it was actually possible to get J.K. Rowling to listen to anyone that wasn't the accountancy department at Warner Brothers, I've got some issues with retroactive world building that I'd want to bring up, but apart from that, I think if I ever get anywhere with this, I'll just randomly select another Authortuber, send them a message saying, hey, do you fancy some social media beef? And they'll say, yes, sounds great, and we'll just fake a massive spat for the enjoyment of everybody else. It'll be like pro wrestling, but, you know, no one has to leave their house. Yeah, I can get on board with that. Comrade Castillo, I'm coming for you. Getting me out of bed. Number 7, have you ever been a part of a writers group? I've been in them since about 2011. Most of my undergraduate and certainly all of my postgraduate has been these writing groups. And good God, that one nearly killed me. Yeah, but I suppose they're rather formalised and you have to be there because you're paying through the nose for tuition. Me and my group of cohorts are almost semi-regularly talking about setting one up. But nothing ever really comes of it. So outside of academia, no, I have never belonged to a writers group. They're few and far between, if they exist at all in this part of the world. It's because Liverpool as a city has 2 prime outlets, one of which is music and the other is sport. And if you don't belong to either one of them, your art form is just breaking against the rocks. So it's yeah, no. This is the closest. This right here and you people are the closest I've got to an actual writers group. No, I'm not lonely. Why do you ask? Number 8, do you have a favourite writer's craft book? Yes, I do. I've also got visual representations. Hang on. It is John Gardner's The Art of Fiction. This is by far and away the single most important craft book I have ever read. I would go so far as to say that, on the off chance there is anybody watching this who is considering studying creative writing at a BA or an MA level, you can save up 70% of your time by buying this book and getting about 5 or 6 decent beta readers. You can save yourself an awful lot of time and an awful lot of money. There are some things the university gives you that you can't get outside of it, but if it's just writing well you're interested in, then this is very much the book for you. I cannot recommend it highly enough. My nephew has drawn in my copy, rather spasmodically, I've just realised. But nevertheless, John Gardner, The Art of Fiction, get your hands on a copy right now. I will wait. No, wait, you're the audience, you can pause this, I'm going to carry on. Number 9, do you have a least favourite writer's craft book? Yes, I do. And this is going to be possibly a little controversial. Stephen King's On Writing. I do not rate it. I do not rate it one little bit. When it comes to things like assistance and looking for answers and looking for guidance, it is totally subjective. One person may get something from this book and another person won't. So if anybody, as I know plenty of people have been helped by this book, then all power to them. Frankly, I found this worse than useless, and if I hadn't have bought it in a charity shop, I would have demanded my money back. The actual on writing section, the actual guide to it, was 30% what struck me as common sense, and 70% could be summed up in Just don't think about it, yeah? God, even imaginary, that was some nasty shit. I wouldn't recommend this to anybody, but particularly somebody starting out. Maybe I was using it wrong. Maybe what I needed from it is not what it offered, but this is my least favourite one, and to be entirely honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades, I don't actually see the appeal in it. Shh. Don't tell anyone. That kind of thing can ruin a dude's social media career. And finally, I have to tag people, and because I'm not very good at this whole social scene thing, I don't know that many. So I'm going to go ahead and tag Wordsmith Sarah and A.S. Howell, because they've both been remarkably kind to me in the past. They've both been very encouraging and very sweet and very generous with their time, and so I think the best thing I can possibly do for them, seeing as they're both wonderful and incredibly busy people, is give them something more to do. So, from Liverpool with love. Well, I've run out of tag prompts. This would appear to be my return to Authortube video. Did you enjoy it? Well, if you're still here, I can't imagine why you'd watch it if you hadn't been. But by all means, feel free to like, comment and subscribe beneath, because it's only ever going to encourage me. And with what I've got coming up in the future, I need as many people at my back as I possibly can. Regular service is resumed. Witty outro. Robinson Castillo thinks that has a sexy voice.